Winnie the Pooh, The Sleepover by Laura Driscoll, illustrated by Josie. Comfortable Piglet, Pooh asked. He was tucking his friend into a dresser drawer that had been made into a bed just the right size for Piglet. Oh yes, Pooh. Thank you ever so much, Piglet replied. The two friends were having a best friend sleepover, which, as far as they could tell, had to involve sleeping over something. I suppose you could say that I'm sleeping over the other dresser drawer, said Piglet. Pooh nodded. He looked over his house. Now, I wonder what I should sleep over. Piglet looked around too, but there seemed to be just one place that was well suited for Pooh, his own bed. So in the end, that's what Pooh decided to sleep over. Well, good night, Piglet, said Pooh. He blew out the candle and climbed into bed. Good night, Pooh Bear, Piglet replied. Piglet lay in the dark of Pooh's room, comfortable in his drawer. What a wonderful best friend sleepover it had been so far, he thought. First, Piglet and Pooh had enjoyed a before bedtime snack. Next, they had put on their pajamas. Then, they had made up a bedtime story together. Of course, it was always fun spending time with Pooh, although there was something about being at Pooh's house at bedtime that was so different from being at Piglet's own house at bedtime. As he lay there in the dresser drawer with his eyes wide open, it occurred to Piglet that the darkness at Pooh's house was much darker than it was at his own house. So Piglet rolled over and pulled up the covers. Then he closed his eyes tight and tried to fall asleep. But nothing happened. Piglet opened one eye and peeked out into the darkness. That's when he noticed that it was very quiet in Pooh's room. Much quieter than the quiet in Piglet's own room at night. In particular, the quiet that was coming from the direction of Pooh's bed, where Piglet's best friend was fast asleep, while Piglet lay wide awake. That was the quietest quiet of all. Pooh, Piglet whispered. Pooh Bear, he called out, a little louder this time. He didn't want to wake up Pooh. Then Piglet wondered if perhaps Pooh was awake, but had just not heard him. Still, there was no answer. Piglet tried his best again to fall asleep. Then he heard a soft, low rumbling. It was curiously similar to the sound of a sleeping bear snoring. As Piglet listened, the sound grew louder and louder, and then softer and softer, and then louder and louder over and over again. Was it the sound of an approaching heffalump? Piglet wondered. The sound continued. Pooh! Oh dear, Piglet shouted, jumping out of the drawer and running to Pooh's bedside. He shook Pooh as he shouted, Wake up! Wake up! Oh please, Pooh! Pooh said drowsily, sitting up. He climbed out of bed and walked over to light a candle. When it was lit, he found Piglet hiding under the covers in Pooh's bed. Why, Piglet, said Pooh. What's the matter? Piglet was trembling so much it was hard to get the words out. It's that horrible noise, Pooh, he stammered. Piglet listened for the noise so he could point it out. Then he realized he couldn't hear it. That's funny, said Piglet as he peeked out from under the covers. The noise stopped as soon as you woke up, Pooh. Said Pooh. He shrugged, then he yawned. I guess that means we can go back to sleep. Piglet wasn't so sure. He didn't want to hurt Pooh's feelings, but he didn't think he could fall asleep in Pooh's room. Pooh Bear, said Piglet timidly, I don't mean to be a bad best friend, but do you think we might, have the rest of our best friend sleep over some other night? I'm just not used to sleeping anywhere but my own house. Pooh sat down on bed and put his arm around Piglet. I understand, Piglet, he said. We can have the rest of our best friend sleep over whenever you like. Pooh helped Piglet gather his things, including his very own pillow. Then, hand in hand, Pooh and Piglet began to walk through the 100-acre wood. It was a short stroll through the forest to Piglet's house. The stars were still twinkling in the night sky when the two best friends arrived. "Here you are, Piglet," Pooh said as they entered. "Home, sweet home." Piglet was very glad to be at his own house. "Oh, thank you, Pooh," he said. "Thank you so much for understanding and for walking me back. I suppose you'll need to get home to bed now." Pooh considered the question. "That does sound like the thing to do," he said, "but first I might sit down for a little rest." Pooh noticed a comfortable-looking chair, just for a few minutes, of course. While Piglet put away his things, Pooh sat down in the chair. It was very more comfortable than it looked. Pooh put his feet, then he decided to rest his eyes, just for a moment. By the time Piglet came back, Pooh was fast asleep. He was even making a soft, low rumbling sound, but in the comfort of his own house. It did not strike Piglet as anything other than the sound of one sleeping bear snoring. Piglet covered his best friend with a small blanket and slipped a pillow under his head. "Sweet dreams, Pooh Bear," he whispered. Then Piglet climbed into his own bed and drifted off to sleep. It seemed that he and Pooh were just having their best friend sleepover after all. The end.